The first thing Warren Zelley noticed when he stepped off the shuttle was the smell. Acrid, thick, and somehow metallic like burnt batteries and wet fur rolled into one. He gagged behind his mask and muttered, "Yep. That's not Earth." The port station on Varnock Roman 9 was a sprawling, rust-colored dome patched together with panels that looked like they'd been scavenged from half a dozen wrecks. Inside, the air was drier but no less pungent. The walls were lined with sealed crates, some labeled in human text, most in alien glyphs that shimmered faintly. A tall, skeletal alien with translucent skin and a high, fluted crest stood waiting. Its name was Dr. Hesh, and it tapped a datapad nervously as Warren approached. "You are the human veterinarian?" Hesh's voice was flat, synthetic, like it was being translated through a broken speaker. "Yeah, Dr. Warren Zelley, got your emergency ping. Big predator injury, you said." He dropped his bag to the floor and cracked his knuckles. "Lead the way." Hesh hesitated. "It is still alive." "Well, that's usually the idea with veterinary work." "It is a Varnathi Grottasaur," Warren blinked. "Those things get to be 12 meters long, right?" 14. "This one is adolescent but injured badly. It is in pain. It is becoming volatile." Warren's eyes narrowed. "And you need me because—" "I will not treat it," Hesh said, stepping back. "It is too dangerous." Warren stared at him for a beat. "You're a vet." "I am not suicidal." The hangar doors rumbled open with a screech that made Warren's teeth ache. Inside was a cage the size of a city bus. The creature inside was coiled like an angry snake, its scales shifting color with its breathing. Clawed limbs twitched with every movement. It had deep gouges along its flank, sticky with dark purple blood, and one of its hind legs jutted at an unnatural angle. Two Varnathi security staff stood nearby, both armed with pulse lances. Neither looked eager to get closer. "It has not eaten in 2 days," Hesh warned. "It struck one of the feeders, broke his spine." Warren was already pulling on gloves. "Don't spook it. You are going in alone." He zipped up his jacket and tossed Hesh a look. "You won't even get close. I don't have a choice." Inside the cage, the Grottasaur let out a low, rattling growl. Warren paused at the entry gate, watching its eyes huge, golden, and unblinking. He spoke calmly, keeping his movements slow. "Okay, big guy, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to fix that leg." The creature shifted, nostrils flaring. Warren held his breath. Then it slumped back down, chest heaving. He stepped forward inch by inch, eyes locked on the wound. Closer, he could see bones pushing through muscle. Bad break, probably from a fall or a fight. The flesh around it was already infected. Warren opened his kit and pulled out a scanner. The moment it beeped, the Grottasaur let out a shriek that shook the walls. Warren dropped and froze. "Don't move," Hesh shouted from the observation deck. "No kidding," Warren muttered. The Grottasaur lowered its head. Its breath came in slow, ragged huffs. Warren stayed crouched, hands in front of him. "I know it hurts. I can help." "But you've got to let me." The creature's huge eye blinked once. Then it turned its head away. Warren didn't waste time. He darted in, scanned the wound, and confirmed the fracture. Femur snapped, partially displaced, with secondary damage to tendon tissue. Back in the hallway, Hesh was pacing. "You are insane. It could have killed you." "Yeah, well, it didn't. I need sedation, something strong but not fatal, and I need a splint kit size 11. You got one?" "I will see what we have. The limb may need amputation." "No. I'm not cutting off a 14-meter predator's leg unless I have no choice. It'll destabilize the whole skeletal system." Hesh made a sound like static. "You are too calm. You're too scared." 2 hours later, Warren was elbow-deep in Grottasaur thigh muscle. The sedation had worked barely. The creature still twitched every so often, and Warren kept his tools close. He worked fast. Cleaned the wound. Realigned the bone manually, no small feat with a creature whose leg weighed more than his entire body, and began sealing the tissue with layered biofoam and synthetic mesh. By the time he stepped out, covered in blood and sweat, his arms shook from exertion. Hesh stared at him. "You did not die. Thanks for the vote of confidence. It will live, but it's gonna need rehab, movement therapy, pain management." That is not possible. It is too violent. Not if you treat it like an animal in pain instead of a threat. Hesh folded his arms. We do not have the resources, Warren sighed. Then I'll do it. Over the next 10 days, Warren slept in the medbay and worked in the Grottasaur's enclosure. He fed it by hand, administered injections, and slowly taught it to tolerate his presence. On day 7, it let him touch the leg without growling. On day 9, it tried to stand. On day 10, everything went wrong. Warren was adjusting the brace when the creature jerked suddenly. Its tail swept sideways, catching him full in the ribs and slammed him into the support wall. He heard the crack before he felt it. Pain exploded through his chest. He gasped, vision spinning, and fell to the floor. Alarms blared. The Grottasaur backed away, eyes wild. Warren tried to push himself up but collapsed again, coughing. Blood flecked his lips. Hesh burst in with 2 security officers. You are injured? No kidding. Do not move, you may have internal damage. Warren closed his eyes and nodded weakly. 2 hours later, he was in the station medbay, hooked to monitors. A Varnathi physician hovered nearby, scanning and recalibrating. 3 fractured ribs, 1 punctured lung, hemothorax present. You are fortunate. Warren laughed once, then winced. Yeah. Feels like winning. Hesh stood at the door. You risked much for a predator. It's an animal. It didn't mean to hurt me. You will need weeks to recover. Months, maybe, and yet you will continue. Warren looked at the ceiling, then back at Hesh. Yeah. I will. Later that night, alone in his bed, tubes in his chest and painkillers dulling his senses, he heard a deep, rumbling sound from the enclosure speakers. The Grottasaur was calling. It didn't sound angry, it sounded like it missed him. The Grottasaur stopped eating again 42 hours after Warren was injured. Refusal of sustenance, said Hesh, tapping at a wall-mounted interface beside the enclosure. It is not physiological. It appears. Behavioral. Warren sat upright in the medbay chair, one side of his torso wrapped in compression mesh. A drainage tube led from under his rib cage to a canister that gurgled faintly. He winced as he leaned forward to see the monitor. You think it's sulking? Hesh blinked both sets of eyelids. This is not a recognized veterinary diagnosis. It's a teenage apex predator with a busted leg and abandonment issues. Yeah, that tracks. Warren eased himself up, holding onto the Roman 4 pole for balance. I'm going in. You are barely mobile. This is ill-advised. Warren tilted his head toward the creature's telemetry. Heart rate steady but dropping. Respirations shallow. That's not just discomfort, that's depression. You leave it alone too long, it gives up. Then you lose it. Then we lose. A predator. If you're still thinking of it like a threat, you're already failing it. The Grottasaur lay coiled on the heated floor of its enclosure, surrounded by untouched food trays and a single shredded foam mat. It made no sound when Warren entered, just twitched one claw lazily and stared at the far wall. Warren took a slow breath. All right, big guy. You gotta work with me here. You don't eat, you don't heal. The creature didn't move. You're not the only one hurting, you know. I've got a tube in my side and a lung that feels like someone parked a forklift on it. Still nothing. Warren limped closer, dragging the Roman 4 stand behind him. At 2 meters, the Grottasaur's nostrils flared. Hey. There you are. He placed a sealed nutrient slab on the floor, then sat down beside it. I'm not leaving, so either you eat or we both sit here like idiots. Time passed hours maybe. Warren dozed off once, head resting against the enclosure wall until a low crunching sound snapped him awake. The Grottasaur was chewing. Later in the observation bay, Hesh stood staring at the playback feed. You bonded with it. Wouldn't go that far, said Warren, sifting through a tray of thermoplastic supports. But it doesn't want to eat without me around, and until that changes, I'm its emotional support mammal. This is not a sustainable treatment model. I know, that's why we're gonna train a replacement. You want to replicate your presence? No, I want an intern. Someone with a spine, a bit of empathy, and preferably not allergic to blood. Warren found his candidate in the cargo bay, crouched beside a crate of expired protein paste. She was human, maybe 20, wearing a maintenance uniform 3 sizes too big and humming to herself as she tried to reset a busted inventory scanner. "You the stowaway who fixed the waste extractor last week?" he asked. She jumped. "I wasn't hiding, I was misplaced. You got a name, Jules." "Jules Anders. You want a job?" She squinted at him. "You're the vet who got tail swiped into a wall. Yep, you still have all your teeth, most of them." She stood up. "I'm interested." Within a day, she was inside the enclosure, standing awkwardly 10 meters from the Grottasaur with a tray of food and a thermal blanket over one arm. "So what happens if it hates me?" "Then you back away slowly and try not to smell like panic," Warren said through the calm. "But it won't. Just keep your posture low and your tone steady." Jules crouched and slid the tray forward. The Grottasaur sniffed, then turned its massive head toward her. Its jaw opened slightly, revealing rows of teeth like sculpted obsidian. "Okay," she breathed. "I think it's..." Smiling, not a thing it does, just means it's curious. It's blinking both eyes. That's probably good. The next day, it let her touch the splint. By the third day, it started following her around the enclosure like a dog that weighed 5 tons. "She's a natural," said Warren, watching the footage from his medbed. "She is reckless," said Hesh. "She's consistent. That's what it needs." "You have no concerns placing her in close contact with a creature powerful enough to destroy structural supports. She's not alone. And we're monitoring every second." The Grottasaur's healing progressed faster than projected. The leg regained partial weight-bearing capacity, and the tissue regeneration was nearing completion. Warren watched the data rolls and shook his head. "This thing's tougher than it has any right to be." "It is not the only one," said Hesh, glancing at the human's slowly emptying chest drain. "Your injuries are healing with abnormal efficiency. That's just stubbornness." "We're good at that." At exactly midday on the 15th day, the Grottasaur stood fully upright for the first time since the injury. It stretched, twisted its torso, and gave a low, almost musical bellow. Jules clapped once. "That's a victory howl, right? Or a call for snacks," Warren said, wheeling himself closer on a chair rigged with repulsor lifts. "Either way, we're making progress." But later that cycle, the creature began pacing, not aimlessly, methodically. It circled the enclosure, sniffed at every vent, tested the gate with one claw. "It's planning something," Jules said, watching from the observation deck. "It's bored," said Warren. "And smart enough to know it's confined." "What do? We give it a challenge." The next morning, they installed a puzzle feeder, an enormous containment sphere with a mechanical locking mechanism that only opened when rotated in a specific pattern. Warren watched as the Grottasaur examined it, tapped it once, then rolled it onto one side. Within 5 minutes, it had opened the hatch. "Okay. New plan," Warren muttered. They upgraded the feeder to a multi-stage release system. The Grottasaur solved that in 7 minutes. On the third iteration, it took a full hour. When the final latch clicked open, the predator didn't even go for the food. It just laid down next to it and stared at the observation window. Jules leaned close to the mic. "I think it's taunting us. We're being outsmarted by a 14-meter lizard," Warren said. "I'm oddly proud." That night, alarms shrieked across the habitat wing. Emergency lighting bathed the corridor in pulsing red. "Containment breach," crackled the comm. Warren was already out of bed. "Where?" "Enclosure 3, Grottasaur." He limped through the hall, past a pair of Varnathi guards loading tranquilizer cannons. "Don't shoot," he shouted. "It has exited its holding zone. Protocol requires it's not attacking, is it?" "No, it is." "Navigating." They reached the far end of the corridor. The Grottasaur stood in front of the medbay door, crouched low, one claw gently scratching at the panel. Warren stepped forward. "You broke out to check on me." The creature turned its head. Its breathing was slow, measured. Jules crept up behind him. "So, what now?" "We let it in." "You're joking." "Nope." The medbay doors slid open. The Grottasaur stepped inside, ducking its head to avoid the lights, and curled up in the corner on a pile of thermal blankets. The station staff stared. It's nesting, said Warren. Hesh looked horrified. It has claimed this space. No, Warren said, easing back into his bed. It's claimed us. There was a long silence. Do we need to file paperwork? Jules asked. Hesh sighed. Extensive paperwork. The Grottasaur huffed once, eyes already closing. Warren leaned back, wincing as his ribs protested. Welcome to the team. The Grottasaur's claws tapped against the medbay floor like someone lightly drumming on steel. It had settled into a habit. Enter at dawn, curl beside the diagnostics column, and refuse to leave until someone brought it a crate of thermal moss or played the low-frequency tones Warren had discovered soothed it. Warren couldn't tell if the staff had adjusted or simply given up trying to enforce boundaries, but the creature now shared the medbay like a very large, very broody roommate. It didn't demand attention, but the moment he coughed too hard or shifted in bed with a wince, its golden eyes would flicker open. Pain response again, said Jules, standing beside the monitor. Third spike this rotation. Yeah, I know, Warren muttered, adjusting the drainage tube. Feels like someone's roasting a marshmallow inside my lung. You need another thoracentesis. You're not clearing fluid fast enough. No, I need to get vertical again. You collapsed trying to tie your shoes this morning. I was reaching too fast. Bad angle, Jules crossed her arms. And then you face-planted into the sink, only partially. You're not going anywhere, I know, he said. But I need to act like I might, otherwise I start feeling like a patient instead of a person. The Grottasaur blinked slowly, then let out a deep exhale that rattled the ceiling lights. See, Warren said, even he thinks I'm pathetic. Jules didn't smile. Your oxygen saturation's been hovering around 87%. If it drops again, we're moving you to assisted ventilation. I'll behave, Warren sighed. But if I'm stuck here, we need to keep him stimulated. He's too alert. That pacing's gonna start again. Hesh, who had been silent at the far end of the room cataloging samples, finally turned. We have exhausted all cognitive enrichment modules in our inventory. He is solving them faster than I can recalibrate them. Then we need to get him outside. The datapad in Hesh's hand made a sharp chime as he dropped it. That is not permitted. He is not classified for open-range activity. He's not a containment hazard anymore. He is a Grottasaur. He is a containment hazard by species definition. Not this one, Warren said. He's different. Hesh tilted his head. By what evidence? He broke out. If he wanted to hurt anyone, he had every opportunity. He is still recovering. So am I, Warren said. We can recover better together. Jules's eyes narrowed. You're not suggesting you go with him. I'm suggesting we both go. Controlled perimeter, monitored, let him move around a bit, stretch the legs, smell something that isn't recycled air. That's extremely reckless, Hesh said. It's therapy. Or a diplomatic incident. Warren grinned without much energy. Then we'll make sure it's a good one. 6 hours later, the outer dome of Varnock Roman 9 auxiliary habitat opened for the first time in 3 years. The sky beyond was a dull ochre, streaked with low-lying clouds that shimmered faintly with atmospheric charge. The air was toxic to most life forms, but the Grottasaur didn't seem to mind. It stepped out cautiously, talons digging into the cracked soil, and let out a low rumble that echoed across the empty plain. Warren stood in the observation pod above, leaning on a support rail. A portable thoracic drain was strapped to his side, and his breath came in short, shallow pulls. Jules adjusted the proximity sensors. He's not running, that's something. He's not stupid, Warren said. He knows he's being watched. There's a lot of equipment out there. If he decides to make a mess, he won't. Below, the Grottasaur sniffed at a wind-swept mound of orange moss, then rolled onto its side, legs twitching. Jules blinked. Is he playing? Looks like it. A Varnathi technician standing behind them tapped one of the monitors. Readings are stable, no aggression, no distress. Hesh entered, arms behind his back. The High Biologist Council has issued a request for summary analysis. They wish to know if this subject can be considered domesticated. Warren frowned. He's not a pet. They are requesting formal classification. Well, tell them this. He's a sentient-adjacent, trauma-informed, semi-rehabilitated megafauna with trust issues and a taste for thermal moss. That is not a recognized category. Then make one. The Grottasaur rolled upright and began limping along the edge of the perimeter, testing the limits of the containment field. When he reached the far corner, he stopped and stared at the distant ridge for a full minute before turning back. "He wants more space," Jules said. "Yeah," Warren replied. "But he knows he won't get it today." The creature returned to the center, curled up again in the dust, and watched the observation pod with one eye half closed. 2 days later, Warren was moved back to his quarters. The medbay felt too sterile, and the Grottasaur had stopped entering once Warren was no longer there. The first night back, Warren woke to a low thrumming sound outside his window. He sat up, swearing as his ribs protested, and peered through the reinforced glass. The Grottasaur was lying in the corridor, head resting next to the door, eyes open. "You're ridiculous," Warren said, cracking the seal and stepping out slowly. The creature didn't move. Warren sat beside its massive forelimb and leaned against its flank. "You know I could have died," he said. A slow exhale, "But I didn't. And you didn't. So I guess we're stuck with each other." The creature's tail flicked once. A week later, the Varnathi Council sent a delegation. 5 of them filed into the observation bay wearing ceremonial robes that shimmered like oil on water. Warren stood at the far end, hands tucked into his coat pockets. "Your request for reclassification has been reviewed," said the lead delegate, a short, broad-chested alien with 6 jointed fingers and a voice like a gravel avalanche. "We have determined the specimen's behavior falls outside known parameters." "Which parameters?" "All of them." "So what happens now? This subject will be designated a category null, no precedent, no restrictions, but also no protections. It will remain your responsibility." Jules turned to Warren. "That's just bureaucracy speak for if it eats anyone, it's your fault." "That's fine," Warren said. "It won't." The Grottasaur stood behind the observation glass, watching silently. The delegates turned to go. The last one paused, then looked back. "It is strange," they said. "You call it he, as if it were more than beast." "It is more than beast," Warren said. "So are we." After they left, Jules leaned on the railing. "You think they'll ever trust him? They barely trust us. What if he changes? What if someday he snaps? Then we'll deal with that. That's a lot of faith." "No," Warren said. "It's a lot of work. Faith just makes it worth trying." The Grottasaur closed its eyes again, chest rising and falling like slow waves. Warren watched for a long moment, then turned away. By the end of the month, the enclosure was decommissioned. The Grottasaur had free range of the auxiliary habitat. Warren had full clearance to oversee it. Jules was made full-time field handler. And Hesh, after several weeks of quiet observation, submitted a paper to the Interstellar Veterinary Consortium titled, "On the Emotional Cognition of Apex Reptiloids, a Case Study in Human-Led Rehabilitation." The final line reads simply, "We were wrong." Warren never read it. He didn't need to. He already knew.